respect South Park a lot for trying new things despite being on the air for almost 20 years. With over 250 episodes under their belts, creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone could easily just continue making the show the way it already is, but the shifts towards poignant satire and topical humor have done wonders for the show, and have helped make it one of my favorites. The most recent change to the show's style occurred last season, after toying around with the idea of having continuity between episodes in seasons 6 and 18, season 19 fully embraced the concept, and each episode focused around a different aspect of PC culture. It stumbled a bit with the finale, but overall season 19 was a refreshing change of pace, and got me interested to see what Parker and Stone were going to do next. Season 20, which aired in the fall of 2016, brought the serialization seen in the previous season to the next level. The format of the show was shifted to following one long story arc across the entire season. The standalone episodes that the show had been doing for the past 19 seasons are now completely gone in favor of each episode playing a part in a huge story. The season follows about 4 different plots that intertwine and factor into the finale. I'll be looking at each one individually before talking about how the season wrapped up, along with a few other comments on it. I don't think there's a better way to start 2017 than by looking at how this show satirized the last year. Or at least that's what I was going to say when this was going to be the first video of 2016. But without further ado, let's jump into Season 20 of South Park. I'll start by talking about the most dominant plotline of the season, which involves Kyle's dad Gerald becoming an internet troll and fighting the Danish. This is the first season to give Gerald some significant time in the spotlight. While he has played a part in various episodes, he's usually grouped in with most of the other dumb adults in South Park, and hasn't been given much of a personality. This season changes that fact by making Gerald one of the most important characters to the story. After getting fed up with other people's Yelp comments, Gerald has become an online troll under the name SkankHunt42 as a way to blow off some steam and get a few laughs. But when Gerald's fun accidentally causes a Danish athlete to commit suicide, the people of Denmark begin to build a website called Troll Trace that can figure out the identity of any person through an internet comment. Or maybe it can figure out someone's entire internet history using someone's name and social security number. The show doesn't exactly specify how it works, but it's still a threat to Gerald, as he doesn't want his family to figure out his online alter ego. So he teams up with a bunch of other trolls with silly designs and names to try and stop Troll Trace from going online. I like how the season depicts internet trolls in different ways. Some are shown as regular people who are just jerks in their spare time, and others are political activists who believe that they can change the world through trolling. They both do the same thing for different reasons, and I thought that was a really interesting concept. Sadly, this idea doesn't have much of a presence in the season. It's sidelined in this plot in favor of focusing on the trolls' battle against the Danish. There are some funny moments to it, like the Denmark theme and the uses of the Rickroll, and the trolls' simultaneous attacks on Denmark, which is presented like the X-Wing pilots in the Star Wars movies reporting in.
821 signed in to multiple accounts and standing by.
You are fat and dumb standing by.
Super sexy Lisa 18 standing by.
Your mom's tits standing by.
SkankHunt42 standing by.
A lot of the Troll Trace story is very plot-heavy and doesn't allow for a ton of humor. And it also kinda makes Gerald more unlikable as it goes along. Gerald's desperate attempts to trick the Danish into not thinking he was a troll by getting his 5-year-old son to take the blame for his actions made him a little unlikable in my eyes. I know that being a jerk is what got him into this mess in the first place, but your main character shouldn't be unlikable, especially in this case where he doesn't really get what's coming to him. The next plot centers around everyone's favorite 10-year-old bigot, Eric Cartman. SkankHunt42's harmful comments have caused a rift between the boys and girls. Everyone suspects Cartman to be SkankHunt because he's, well, Cartman, despite his recent and poor attempts to better himself. When the other boys break all of his technology, Cartman finds a friend in the background character Heidi Turner, and the two start a very odd and somewhat forced romance. The duo work together, reuniting the boys and girls by helping the Danish get Troll Trace online. That is, until Cartman realizes what information Heidi will be able to have access to, and tries to get off of Earth with the help of SpaceX. The main problem with Cartman's subplot is that Cartman himself is not always funny. The show doesn't understand that Cartman and Heidi calling each other boo or babe, or Cartman saying skew aren't very funny. And these unfunny jokes are most of the material you'll get out of Eric in this season. Cartman is only really entertaining here when he's trying to act progressive in school, or acting like his old self, but that personality only comes to center stage in about 2 episodes, and it makes most of the subplot seem very dull and boring. Cartman getting a girlfriend already seems like sort of a desperate or fanfiction-y premise, and I could forgive it if it was funny. But alas, it is not.
Is that a joke?
Also, who thought it would be a good idea to devote 3 episodes to making fun of SpaceX? I know that once they actually got Elon Musk on board, they couldn't drop the subplot, but it doesn't make Cartman's plot much funnier, and it wastes time that could have been used to flesh out some of the better plot lines. Speaking of better plot lines, I'll briefly mention Butters. He's become tired of the boys of the school being blamed for everything, and he has decided to protest by walking around the school with his pants down. Butters stops his protesting after a nice talk with Bill Clinton, and then joins Cartman and Heidi at SpaceX, as he also attempts to channel his inner Professor Farnsworth.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
This subplot is actually one of the funnier ones, but also the most random. Butters completely changes his personality after his talk with Bill, as he basically goes from acting like Cartman to acting like his old self. It's a little jarring, and the same thing happened to Cartman in between seasons. But Butters is still funny, and the show is kind of self-aware at how he has changed.
Oh, no. You're a male chauvinist sexist pig, Butters. You don't get to go to Mars.
What Butters ends up doing at SpaceX is convincing Cartman to stop the program by making him believe that if people colonize Mars, the woman will enslave men and make them do awful things. Butters just seems to pop up in Cartman's plot for the sake of moving the story along and wrapping things up. But at least his story was kind of funny at points. The final big plot involves the member berries, sentient grapes that are literally the root of all nostalgia. It was a weird idea for sure, but these characters managed to be pretty creative and hilarious. They sort of sent out an anti-nostalgia message, especially towards how it was used in episode 7 of Star Wars. That's pretty ironic considering how the advertising for this season heavily played up nostalgia, with montages of previous episodes. I feel like the anger towards that film was a little unnecessary, but it was still pretty funny. It was a brilliant idea to connect the member berries to the presidential election, as the nostalgia Americans had for the quote-unquote great version of the country is probably what helped Donald Trump gain so much support. Or in South Park's case, Mr. Garrison. The only element to return from season 19 is Garrison acting as the show's version of Mr. Trump. And although some of the shots the show takes at the Donald are kinda predictable, they were probably the most consistent source of humor in the season. I love seeing Mr. Garrison act like a stand-up comic at his rallies and prance around town demanding people to suck his dick. I did think it was interesting how the show decided to depict him as sympathetic, showing him regret his decisions on the campaign trail. But that conflict kind of went away as soon as Trump was elected in the real world. Over the past 8 years, South Park has kind of become known for making episodes revolving around the results of that year's presidential election. And thanks to the show's incredibly quick production cycle, these election episodes have been able to air only hours after the results have been announced. But this was the first time a seasons-long story arc was dependent on if the giant douche or the turd sandwich won. It's incredibly clear that the South Park crew did not think that the king of memes was going to win. Not only did the preview of the post-election episode make that fact clear, but so did the quality of all of the episodes after the election. To start, lots of plot points were dropped without any resolution. The conflict between the boys and girls, the member berries controlling minds, Bill Clinton's Gentleman Club, J.J. Abrams' involvement with the member berries, the original Stormtroopers thing, Stan and Wendy's breakup, and Hillary Clinton's involvement with the Danish. Even characters who were important to the story, like Caitlyn Jenner, and even the member berries disappeared or had very little involvement in the final episodes. And we don't even know the final fate of Cartman and Heidi's relationship. This is lazy storytelling, plain and simple. At the end of the season, I expect to get a conclusion to the elements that you set up at its beginning, but apparently South Park couldn't be bothered to do that. Instead, it would rather tell more unfunny jokes about SpaceX, instead of expanding upon things that were set up in episode 1. You could argue that some of these, or maybe all of these plot points could be resolved next season, but the sentient advertisements from season 19 also didn't get much of a resolution. And all that got in this season was a quick mention. Even the plot points that did get an ending weren't done very well. Rebooting the entire internet felt like a lazy way to stop Troll Trace. It seemed like a very easy resolution that reminded me of the ending to the season 12 episode, Overlogging, where the internet was fixed by unplugging and then plugging in the giant internet router in the center of the earth. For a simple standalone episode, that ending was pretty funny. You just can't end a season-long story arc in the same way you would end a standalone episode. It's just anticlimactic and not very funny. Additionally, the main troll leading the Troll Trace operation, whose name was Leonard Bedrager, turned out to be a troll himself, and the whole Troll Trace program was created just to get a laugh. It's great irony, but the disappointing thing is that Bedrager was just some random guy. Having an anonymous troll worked out for the show before, when it was done on a much smaller scale in the classic season 10 episode, Make Love Not Warcraft. I dare say that this one episode is better than this entire season. Not only is it hilarious all the way through, but it also showed the large effect trolling can have on people without over-exaggerating the abilities of trolls. The episode didn't need to give the identity of the troll because the story was more focused on the actions of the troll rather than his motivations. We know that Bedrager created Troll Trace for a laugh, but those motivations are just too shallow to justify him being the villain for the past 10 episodes. Sure, Gerald had similar motivations to start trolling, but he was a supporting character who we've gotten to know for years. The Bedrager reveal would have worked a lot better if he was an already established character, and it could have been funnier too, depending on who they went with. But instead, he was just a dude whose real name we never even learned. How disappointing. But one of the bigger things that sucks about this season is that two of its larger plots don't have any relation to each other. Season 19 connected its storylines about PC culture and ads with a simple line that made the connection between the two concepts very clear.
It's PC, but a verbal form of gentrification. Spruce everything up, get rid of all the ugliness, in order to create a false sense of paradise? Only one thing can actually live in that world. Ads.
But outside of Garrison commenting on how a method of trolling is similar to how he got elected, the two plots pretty much stay out of each other's way. Throughout the whole season, I was waiting for some kind of connection between the two plots. A reason why the creators decided to focus an entire season on both trolls and the presidential election. But we really didn't get that, and it makes a lot of the season seem kinda pointless. It's clear that the crew behind the show didn't exactly know how to end the season, but they were already setting themselves up for disaster before the results of the election were announced. The South Park crew doesn't seem to plan very far ahead when writing story arcs. This is obvious by the fact that almost every episode had a cliffhanger, and some of them were retconned in following episodes, like how the episode Fort Collins ends with Hillary Clinton saying that she needs Skank Hunt's help. But it doesn't make sense why she would say that, because in the next episode she's working with the Danish to give Gerald to them. Because the creators didn't have a clear idea of what they were going to do next, a lot of plots moved extremely slowly, slower than Jimmy can sing the 12 Days of Christmas.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me.
A lot of them felt like the second part of South Park's 3-part episodes. They know that they won't be able to wrap up the plot, so they just tell a few jokes and bring up a few more plot points. It makes for a lot of boring episodes, and while I can forgive episodes like A Song of Ass and Fire because they have satisfying conclusions, I really can't forgive an entire season when most of it bored me. There's also a lot of filler plot lines. Ones that are introduced just to waste time and are dropped right after they appear. Stuff like Scott Malkinson's threats to leave Twitter, or the previously mentioned Gentleman's Club. They are yet another sign of laziness, and just waste my and the show's time. But I think I've already wasted enough of my own time talking about this mediocre season. I feel like South Park's 20th season was just filled with missed potential. In a year with so much crazy and controversial topics, it's disappointing that South Park decided to focus all of its efforts on topics that were done better in previous episodes, or were too slow to be very interesting. I can't say that I laughed every so often, but the comedy seemed to be sidelined in favor of telling a story that ended up being just half-baked because of how it was written. To be clear, I did not hate this season. It's not the worst the series has done, and it still has a few redeeming qualities. I was invested enough in it to watch till the end, and things like the member berries and the Danish song have become instantly iconic. But these few positives don't make me want another season structured like this one. I feel like connecting each episode with one big theme is an idea that still has some potential, but I don't want to see another season close to this ever again. The best episode of this season came about when the show was satirizing current events in the way only South Park can. And luckily, if the title of the season's finale is any indication, it seems like the creators of the show may be agreeing with me. Or maybe that title was just trolling us and getting our hopes up for what's to come next year. 2017 is officially South Park's 20th anniversary after all. The Fractured But Whole looks really cool, and Trey Parker is going to be in Despicable Me 3.
Okay.
But despite whatever this show does next, I give South Park Season 20 a
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. A full commitment's what I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any other guy. And I just wanna tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you.
And a partridge in a pear tree.